The good news for the New York Islanders is that some of their injured players are getting closer to returning, but that raises the question of how do you get under the cap and how do you set forth the best roster going forward? We're going to tackle some of those questions and preview tonight's game against Chicago, all on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Everydayers, people who listen to this show regularly, know that right now, the Islanders' wounded players, in particular Anthony Duclair and Adam Pelech, they were in practice or at the morning skate before the game against the LA Kings on Tuesday, still wearing non-contact jerseys, so still not 100% back at practice, but certainly getting closer and closer to their return to the ice. And since those two players happen to be on LTIR, two players are on LTIR, the Islanders, when they get healthy, are going to have to figure out a couple of moves on the roster. They can only have 23 active players. And then, of course, they have to get cap compliant. And obviously, when Mathew Barzal returns, that's going to be the big boost to the salary hit more than any other player. But again, the Islanders are going to have to make some moves. So the question is going to become, what are the best moves for the Islanders? How do you get cap compliant? And how do you put together the best possible roster given the circumstances? And the first question that I think needs to be asked is about defenseman Isaiah George. And again, if you've listened to the show or watched the show regularly, you know I'm a big Isaiah George fan. He's played 18 games. He's had 3 assists. He's only a -2, only 1 minor penalty, 2 penalty minutes in 18 games. And while he's coming off what was unquestionably his most difficult game Tuesday against the LA Kings, he has definitely been a pleasant surprise for the New York Islanders this year. And, against LA, he was only on the ice for 7 minutes, 36 seconds, and he did not play at all in the final 32-22 of the game. So essentially for the second half of the game, he was riding the pine. And look, like I said on the show yesterday, these days for rookies are going to happen. There's little doubt about it. That is, rookies have days like that. I guess there's just no way around that. And yet, the question now becomes, what do you do? How do you handle the Isaiah George situation, in particular when Adam Pelech returns to the lineup? There's the separate issue of, okay, do you play him tonight against Chicago? Do you have him sit for a game? How is he going to, how is Patrick Waugh going to handle the short-term situation? I think they should play Isaiah George. Here's what Waugh had to say to the media about it, speaking to Ethan Sears of the New York Post. He said, hey, this kid has been outstanding for us since he's been here. These things happen. On my rookie year, I had some bleepy nights. I think we call that a career. I think he's going to learn a lot from that game, and now I want him to bounce back. That tells me it's unlikely that George is benched tonight. It's for starters. So for the very short term, although we still don't have any official announcement about tonight's game against the Blackhawks and whether or not Isaiah George will be available or will be a scratch, I think he's going to play. And even if they sit him against Chicago tonight, I think he's going to be back in the lineup, no more than one game sitting out. But when Pelech comes back, that's where you have a big question. And to me, you got to think more long-term about this situation. We have seen the way the Islanders handled young players has not always been ideal. Let's put it that way. And whether it's Oliver Wahlstrom or Samuel Bolduc or, so many other guys who have come up through the system and just not been able to develop the way that fans and scouts had originally hoped they would develop because of the way the Islanders brought them up. You can go all the way back to Josh Bailey, who the Islanders brought up too quickly, or Nito Niederreiter. Plenty of guys who, a different regime, but the organization, this has been an issue for a long time. To me, you want Isaiah George to play and play a lot of minutes. The worst case scenario for Isaiah George after Adam Pelech comes back is for him to either be in the press box as the seventh defenseman or for him to play very few minutes to get that, 9, 10, 12 minutes a game kind of a thing. For his long-term development, it may be better. I think it is wiser to send Isaiah George down to Bridgeport and let him play 23, 25, 27 minutes a night. Let him play in big, important situations. Let him be on the ice when you're protecting a one-goal lead, if Bridgeport ever gets to do that, but bad joke, sorry. But, get him out there when you're down a goal or up a goal late in the game. Let him get some experience on the power play or killing penalties or in big, important situations. Let him play early and often. If he's not going to get regular minutes with the Islanders, it makes more sense to let him play. Samuel Bolduc, you could talk all you want about whether he has the tools or whatever. But last season and this season, what the Islanders did, Samuel Bolduc was out of options because of the way they brought him up and down, wasn't playing, and you know what? His development stagnated because if you're not on the ice, you're not going to get better. There is only so much you can learn in practice, especially if you're the seventh defenseman in practice. So do not let this happen to Isaiah George. The other reason I think it makes more sense to send Isaiah George down to Bridgeport is this. He is the only player on the current 22-man Islanders roster, among the defensemen at least, who can go down to Bridgeport without having to clear waivers. And while neither Grant Hutton nor Dennis Cholowski are probably part of the Islanders' long-term plans on the blue line, you don't want to lose them for nothing. They are valuable players who have demonstrated over the course of the time that they've played due to the injuries to Riley and Pelech and Romanov at different times that they can play, a role on the third pair. Cholowski can give you some second power play minutes and give you a little juice offensively. These guys have a value to the organization. And they're also older guys. They're veterans. So it's not like, You're not wondering about their development, that in 2 years, Grant Hutton is not going to develop into what he's going to develop into. That's not an issue right now. Grant Hutton, he's 29 years old. He's not going to be that different of a hockey player than he already is. It's just not the way it goes. Dennis Cholowski, 3 years younger, but again, here's a guy who is about to turn 27 in February. He is not a player who is going to be all of a sudden a prospect. So you want to maximize Isaiah George. If he's not going to play, you send him down to play big minutes. What he did already this year with the Islanders, with the big club, is a bonus. And it accelerated his development. You just don't want it to take a step back by sending him to the press box to watch indefinitely for the rest of this season. There are, 50 games roughly left for the Islanders to play. Bridgeport's going to have, 35, 40 games more to play. Let him go out there and play and develop and learn. And believe me, if somebody else gets injured and you need to call him back up, you could bring back Isaiah George in a heartbeat because you already know what he's capable of doing, and you don't risk losing Hutton or Cholowski, who have proven their usefulness to the organization during the last 2 months. All right, we've got more to discuss. I mean, it's not going to be enough to free up just that cap space. What do you do if you're the New York Islanders once Mathew Barzal comes back, once Anthony Duclair comes back? How do you free up cap space and put out the best possible lineup? We'll talk about the options. We'll talk about what Lou Lamoriello should do. We'll also preview tonight's game against the Blackhawks, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, maybe the best clutch goalie in NHL history, a man who led the Islanders to 4 straight Stanley Cups in goal. I don't think they get too much easier than this for Islander fans, but let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of Locked On Islanders will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/LockedOn. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOn right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/LockedOn. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Today's episode is also brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And Islander fans, use your knowledge of the Islanders and the game of hockey to place exciting bets. Check out all the latest odds on FanDuel for tonight's game against Chicago. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the cap, it's still a mess. Yeah, the LTIR gave the Islanders a little relief, and you needed that relief. But what do you do once you get Anthony Duclair and Mathew Barzal back in the lineup? Because you're going to need a little more room than what you've got right now. And I think there are some obvious candidates here. I would start with Pierre Engvall, mainly because he's got a $3 million salary. And let's face it, he is not playing consistently the kind of hockey, the style of hockey that Patrick Roy wants him to play. And, you know, he had that 3-game goal scoring streak and maybe a 4-game stretch where he was doing things the way his coach wanted him to do. But overall, that doesn't seem to be his default mode. And so you're just getting the occasional good performance out of Engvall, and then you get 5 games where he's just not doing the thing that you want him to do. If you send Engvall down to the minors and he gets claimed, which I doubt will happen because nobody is going to want 6 more years. See, the thing about Engvall is this. The $3 million a year cap hit is not awful. He's slightly overpaid. Maybe he's worth $2.5 million. But the 7-year term with, 5 more years after this season still on the books is something that a lot of teams wouldn't want to touch. So you'd have to put him on waivers. He's already cleared waivers once this year to start the season in Bridgeport. You put him on waivers. If somebody claims him, off the books, no problem. You move on. If nobody claims him, you can save $1.15 million by sending him to the minors. And, you could always try to trade him. You may have to retain salary or sweeten the pot with a pick, which the second one you don't want to do if you're the Islanders, because you are in a situation where if you want to make this team younger, faster, and stronger, you're going to want to accumulate picks and prospects, not trade them away to get rid of bad contracts and dead wood. So, while Lou Lamoriello may say, okay, we'll trade a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick or 2nd-round pick, and you take the salary of Pierre Engvall, don't do that, Lou. Don't do that. Eat some salary if you must, but get that, if you eat 50% of the salary, get him off the books. And the alternative, if nobody will touch him in a trade, you buy him out. Because the cap hit on a buyout would not be horrible, and you do that in the offseason. The other thing you would kind of need to do, most likely, is to send Hudson Fasching back down to Bridgeport. I like Hudson Fasching. I think he can be a useful, 4th line, occasionally 3rd line guy, but he's not playing much this year. He's played 10 games. He's a -2. He has no points to speak of. 3 hits in 10 games. 2 shots on goal in 10 games. Again, I don't want to lose Hudson Fasching, but clearly he's serving as the 13th or 14th forward on most nights. And Matt Martin has sort of found his niche and doing his thing. There are not enough physical guys on this team who will hit. So Matt Martin is needed and, does fill a particular role on this team, even though there may be cheaper and other options available out there. But I don't imagine they're sending Matt Martin down. That wouldn't make sense. They're going to get Matt Martin that 1,000th game. I think it's Hudson Fasching. And again, you have to send him through waivers. If he gets claimed, I would wish Hudson Fasching all the luck in the world. Like I said, I like the kid. But Fasching also, not a lot of NHL experience. But Hudson Fasching is not a kid. Hudson Fasching is 29 years old. So, not a prospect anymore. He's in his prime. This is it. This is prime Hudson Fasching. And if he doesn't have a role and isn't going to play every day, you could always call up your Karlstroms, your Foodies, your Gautiers. You've got other options down there in your William Dufours and your Matthew Maggios and your Alex Jeffries. Again, I would rather keep Hudson Fasching, but it seems to me to be a logical move to send him down to the minors if you have to make some kind of move. So those would be the moves that I would tend to make, and we'll see what Lou Lamoriello ends up doing. It'd be interesting to see how this sort of ping pong match between Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy with Pierre Engvall plays out. Let's hope that the GM and the coach can get on the same page. And even better, let's hope that Pierre Engvall can play the way his coach wants him to play so he can make useful contributions. But you know what? I'll believe it when I see it. It hasn't happened enough over the course of this year, last year, keep going. Other than a few stretches early on in his Islanders tenure, Engvall has largely been a disappointment. All right, still a little time before everybody comes back, but wanted to sort of start that discussion rolling. Islanders in action tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks. That is a 7:30 Eastern time start at UBS Arena. We have a full preview of that game, plus our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's why you need to start today. You can win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to even win. The $50 is guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. This week on Prize Picks, looking at hockey, Jack Hughes for more than 4 shots, or Artemi Panarin for more than 1 assist. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with my friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from hosts Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Islanders, Blackhawks tonight, 7:30. We talked at the beginning of the week how important this stretch of games were going to be for the Islanders. That if they wanted to make any kind of run this season, they needed to play well this week. And I said a minimum of 4 points, 5 would be a bonus. Well, to get the 4 points after losing to LA on Tuesday, you need to beat Chicago twice. Because Chicago's in the Western Conference, I really don't care if it's in regulation or overtime or a shootout. Get me 4 points. The Blackhawks have a new coach. They lost their starting goalie, Peter Mrazek. He's on IR, so Arvid Soderblom is most likely going to get the start against the Islanders. He played really well as the Blackhawks ended their losing streak, beating that struggling team that plays in Madison Square Garden 2-1 a couple of nights ago. So the Blackhawks get off the schneid and get a win. But for Chicago all year, they've struggled to score goals. 30th in the league in goals scored, middle of the pack, 18th in goals against. The power play isn't bad. They can manufacture goals with the extra attacker. They're 11th in the league, 22.3% there. And the penalty kill has been good. They are 6th in the league at 82.5%. We mentioned Arvid Soderblom. He is 2-6-1 this year. In 8 starts, he has a 2.41 goals against and a 921 save percentage. Now, again, he only gave up 1 goal against the Rangers on Monday. By the way, the player to watch more than anyone is Connor Bedard. He was the number 1 pick in last year's NHL draft. That was the 2023 draft. Still only 19 years old. He leads the team with 21 points in 28 games, but only 5 goals. He is learning still, hasn't made the progress that the Blackhawks were hoping he'd make in year 2. But the thing about the Blackhawks, they are young, they are fast, they've been accumulating picks and prospects, and it's just a question of when they start to gel and mature and live up to the advanced billing. Ryan Donato right now leading the team with 10 goals. He is second on the team with 15 points. You have Nick Foligno with 7 goals. And there are some familiar names on this team as we go up and down the lineup. Connor Bedard with Ilya Mikheyev and Philip Kurashev. That's the top line. Then you have Ryan Donato, Taylor Hall, the veteran, and Tyler Bertuzzi. That's the second trio. Jason Dickinson centers Nick Foligno and Teuvo Teravainen on the third line. And then it's Lucas Reichel, Pat Maroon, a familiar name to Islander fans, and Joey Anderson on the fourth line. On defense, Alex Vlasic and Wyatt Kaiser are the top pair. Nolan Allen and Connor Murphy, the middle pair. And then Kevin Korchinski and TJ Brody are the third pair. The backup right now is Drew Comiso. He'll back up Soderblom. A lot of injured players. We mentioned Peter Mrazek, usually the starting goalie. Laurent Brasseau, he's injured on IR. Seth Jones, the veteran defenseman, on IR. Alec Martinez is day-to-day. Craig Smith just listed as out, but not on IR right now. Islanders have got to handle the speed of the Blackhawks, and they cannot allow the young Chicago players to easily get into the zone with time and space. If Connor Bedard has room, and 11 of his 21 points this year have come on the power play, if you give a guy like Bedard time and space, you will see some beautiful, skilled plays, and you don't want to do that. So the Islanders have to stay out of the penalty box. They have to be positionally responsible. Do not back up the way the Islanders tend to back up. And they have got to get, a little pressure on the Blackhawks defense. This should be a low-scoring game. The question is whether the Islanders will do what it takes to get the win. No reason not to get 4 points in 2 games against the Blackhawks. No offense to the Blackhawks. They're still rebuilding. They will get better. I like what they're doing as a plan, but they're still kind of not at the stage yet where they are going to be more, they're at the stage where you want to see progress, where you don't want to be in a lottery team again this year. You want to be in the playoff picture until mid-March to late March, if you could help it. We'll see if they can get that done, but a big opportunity for the Islanders. Oh, by the way, wanted to mention this, Semyon Varlamov not skating yet. So the Islanders will have a decision whether they go with Sorokin or Hogberg in goal. You got to figure Patrick Waugh has 2 choices. You could either play Hogberg tonight against the Blackhawks or wait, hope that Varley will be ready for Sunday's game in Chicago and then play Varley on Sunday. Or you wait, and if Varley isn't ready, play Hogberg on Sunday. You can't, in my mind, you shouldn't play Sorokin in both games. But let's see what Patrick Waugh decides to do. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. And today is the 74th birthday of Hall of Fame goaltender Billy Smith, the Perth, Ontario native, a fifth-round pick of the Kings back in 1970. Played 5 games for LA during the 71-72 season before the Islanders added him in the expansion draft, and he played the rest of his career with the Islanders all the way through the 88-89 season. You look at his career numbers, a .318 goals against average, an .895 save percentage. They're solid. They don't seem Hall of Fame type numbers, but he did win 305 games. And the thing about Billy Smith, the bigger the game, the better he played. And he played in an era with a lot more offense. And so, he could give up 4 goals and win 7-4. And that was fine with the New York Islanders. The most important thing is how clutch Billy Smith was. He was tough. He was combative. You went into his crease at your own risk. Ask Wayne Gretzky about that. And he was a money goaltender, the kind that every team loves to have in the postseason. One of his better games as an Islander, there are so many to choose from, but I'm going to choose May 13th, 1982, Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Islanders, Vancouver Canucks. This game is in Vancouver, and the Islanders already had a 2-0 lead in the series. Billy Smith and Richard Brodeur, the goalies for this one. If the Islanders win it, they take a commanding 3-0 lead in the series. If the Canucks win it, it's a whole new series, and all of a sudden, all bets are off. Well, Billy Smith made sure that the Canucks did not win it. A 23-save shutout for Battling Billy Smith. Clark Gillies and Mike Bossy score in the second period. Bob Nystrom adds an empty netter in the third, and the Islanders win 3-0. Billy Smith, a 23-save shutout. He gets the win. Billy Smith, Hall of Famer, best goalie in Islanders history. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, shoot us an email. LockedOnIslanders@gmail.com is the address. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at LockedOnIsles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis. Have a great day, everybody. We're back tomorrow with our key takeaways from this game and a look ahead to Sunday's game against the Blackhawks again. Stay safe, have a great day, and of course, let's go Islanders.